According to the church, Mary herself was between 13 and 14 years old when she had Jesus.
According to the church.
How old was Joseph according to the church? He was in his 90s.
Oh, says it right there on the screen, IP. Says that Joseph was in the 90s. All right.
Why are you hypocritical when you talk about Islam?
We're hypocritical because Joseph was in his 90s.
When the age difference is even greater than the age difference of...
Notice what the point... I don't even know why I'm stopping this. I wanted to just watch it. I can't listen to this guy for literally 2 seconds. But
Stupid. Let's just talk about the Mary thing for a second. Okay, that comes from the Proto-Evangelium of James.
Wait. We're going to pull some of this stuff up.
All right, fine.
Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Aisha.
So that last point he was saying was the age difference. If Joseph is in his 90s, which he claims is what Christianity teaches, that Joseph was in his 90s and that Mary was between 12 and 14, the age difference was even bigger than between Muhammad and Aisha, and therefore we're hypocrites if we call out Muhammad. And this is like every old Dawa guy, every new Dawa guy, they all develop this sudden urge to defend marriage.
And they immediately lose all their brain cells doing it because they always bring up the dumbest and the worst arguments possible in order to defend marriage. So they become evil and dumb at the same time.
And so here's the site that he uses that. So we've got Tax Slayer because it's tax season. We've got exclusive Super Bowl interview ads all over. But this is crosswalk.com by Whitney Hopler. Guys, keep in mind, this is what he linked to. This is what he put on the screen as his source. When we say, hey, we're not aware of any reliable source on the age of Mary, what's your source? He went to this website. The Virgin Mary, who served as the mother of Jesus on earth, is known for her spiritual maturity. She inspires many people through her example of faith and trust in God. In art, Mother Mary is often portrayed as a fully grown woman. But how old was Mary when she had Jesus, really? Mary was actually a young teen when she gave birth to Jesus, historians believe. Just how young? Historians agree that Mary was most likely between 12 and 14 years old when Jesus was born. Whitney Hopler says, but notice it's not just Whitney Hopler saying this, it's Whitney Hopler saying, historians agree that Mary was most likely between 12 and 14 years old when Jesus was born. That's interesting because the most common thing I've seen is historians saying we don't know how old she was. And what I have seen is I'll frequently see things like she could have been as young as 12 to 14 because that's when rabbis would allow someone to get married, right? Before, if you were under 12, the rabbi was not going to do it. You have any thoughts on this here?
Yeah, put my screen up. So this is a paper written by Amram Trooper, scholar that actually looked at this. And on the basis of rabbinic sources and ancient documents, scholars suggest the average age of first marriage in Palestine in the Western Diaspora was in the late teens or early 20s for women and around 30 for men. You go down to the footnote, you can see her sources here. And she also notes Tim Parkin argues, however, that this age differential would probably not have translated into a significant difference in fertility due to the likelihood that the experience of childbirth for a mother in her early teens would lead to
deleterious,
that's it, thank you, effects that would eventually decrease her fecundity. So right there we see that ancient people, Tim Parkin is basically suggesting ancient people were not stupid. They knew a 12-year-old was not equipped yet to have a child. Michael Sallow's book is on screen. All right, so with this one, again, he says it could have been Palestine, Western Euphoria, could have been mid or late teens. So same kind of roughly thing. Girls were not really marrying until basically they had started the age of monarchy, which would be past 16. He notes that when Muslims go to the Talmud to cite these ages, he says the rabbis, we have to assume, knew that their ideal ages for marriages did not correspond to what they typically saw around them. He actually points out that there's a huge difference when a rabbi says an ideal age versus what was actually happening. And he lists some examples here. Like he cites, for example, this one text, I believe it was Philo, a 20-year-old Jewish woman from Egypt who died while apparently betrothed is described as ripe for marriage like a rose in a garden. So we see this idea that in the Jewish text, he notes that girls had to wait until they were older, closer to the age of 20 in their late teens. And they also he notes they had to actually agree to it. So you couldn't marry a girl off against her will.
There's no reliable source on the age of Mary. When were people actually getting married? Somewhere around the age of 20 is when they were actually getting married. So in reality, here's what was allowed and here's what was actually the case. And so if you were trying to assess, hey, how old was Mary? You'd have to say, okay, we'll just go with the average age of first marriage, and go with that. And you're pointing out that would be around 20, not around 12.
Yeah, late teens. You could say 18. I'd say, but yeah, some women were waiting till 20 though. And even the Catholic Encyclopedia that has a entry on Saint Joseph says the sources on his age and Mary's age, these come from late unreliable apocrypha texts. So it directly says that even the early Christian sources that try to calculate Mary and Joseph age, they're not reliable. So we got to go on what the current scholarship shows. And if you look at what Michael Satlow and Amram Trooper have argued, you're getting late teens to early 20s, not this 12-year-old. Again, would still have been a perpetual virgin if the Catholic tradition is right.
How old was Joseph according to the church? He was in his 90s.
Shouldn't have put the source on the screen. When we say something about Muhammad, when we say something about Aisha, we just say, I saw it on a website. Yoo-hoo! No, we quote your sources. Why isn't he quoting our sources? Why is he going to websites? Because he doesn't have a source for anything he's saying here except websites. All right, guys, everyone see this up here? You can see part of the quotation. And as old as 36 to 42, he focuses on that 90s part. See right there, he says 90s, and then he puts it on the screen so that people won't actually look at the words on the page. And they'll just assume that he's telling the truth. Now let's go to this actual article here. Joseph may have been as young as 18 to 20 and as old as 36 to 42 when he married Mary. Since the Bible doesn't mention how old he was, it may be possible to use specific historical and cultural factors to estimate an age range. Also, some unsupported traditions imply that Joseph was in his 80s or 90s. This was his source that he put on the screen.
Does he read
unsupported traditions?
It's amazing how many of these Dawa guys do not even read the sources they put on the screen in their own videos.
According to the church, Mary herself was between 13 and 14 years old when she had Jesus.
Guys, is that true? Is it true that according to the church, Mary was between 13 and 14? No. It's according to a website which falsely says this is something that historians agree on. Historians, what you see from historians is that's when you could have been married. To say that all historians agree that that's how old Mary was is false. So he goes to a website and cites the website as the church. There's a website saying it. Therefore, this is the position of the church in general. Liar. Liar, liar, liar. But he doesn't stop there.
Gave birth to him. How old was Joseph according to the church? He was in his 90s.
What does that source? We went to the actual source. Does this source say that Joseph was in his 90s? No. It says it's even on the screen. Look at that. Unsupported traditions imply that Joseph was in his 80s or 90s. This article, so he can't even find an article to agree with him. He can't even find an article that agrees with him on this point. So he has to find an article that says Joseph was somewhere between 18 and 42. So he could have been as young as 18 to 20 and as old as 36 to 42. It's right there on the screen. And then it goes on to say, well, some unsupported traditions imply that Joseph was in his 80s or 90s. And then Muslim Cowboy says this is what is accepted in Christianity. Joseph was in his 90s. The guy who does all his research, Googling articles, can't find one that agrees with him. So he finds one that at least mentions 90s as an unsupported tradition, and he states it as fact. Does this guy have one drop, a drop of integrity anywhere in his body?
I just hope all the Muslims listening understand that I want to thank the Muslim Cowboy because he teaches Muslims how to research. It makes our job so much easier. Thank you. Thank you for all the hard work you do, Muslim Cowboy. Training Muslims, because when they get in arguments with our fans, they're going to look incredibly stupid. So thank you, Muslim Cowboy, for assuring that will happen.
Guys, just to recap, if Catholics don't treat them as reliable, there's not one person on the planet who treats these late sources as reliable. The point here is, where are you getting the idea that Joseph is in his 90s? Well, it says right here that there are unsupported traditions implying that. Can we trust those unsupported traditions? No one does. Christians don't. They don't at all. I've never met a Christian who trusts these traditions. And he's stating it as authoritative fact. Guys, again, compare this with what we do with Islam. If we did this, we saw it on a website, and the website says some unsupported traditions say that Muhammad did such and such, but these are completely weak, fabricated later hadiths and so on, and we use that as our evidence. Would any Muslim accept it? No, you'd call us
No.
liars. You'd call us liars and deceivers and say, see, this is what the kuffar do. They have to lie. What do you guys do when you go to the Bible? You lie. It's like, what's the point of explaining lying to people who believe that lying is perfectly acceptable?